Well, hi everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Feeling Smarter. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Tim Miller. G'day, Tim. How are you?
Yeah, going pretty well, Aaron. How are you doing?
Not too bad, thank you. Well, your days and weeks over the past few months have been filled with legacy pensions and the amnesty that took effect from the 7th of December last year that allowed for a number of these retirement products to undertake commutation where previously they were non-commutable income streams. Now, in part, we've been able to achieve these for a whole range of clients, but one of the things that has been holding people back, of course, has been the asset test exempt income streams. So I might get you to elaborate in the first instance why there has been a sit and hold, and then what has recently changed in this, or what we've been waiting for more to the point, to allow for these types of income streams to then be commuted, in particular, as I said, where we had age pension entitlements attached to those.
Yeah, so without getting too historical with these, obviously these pensions were set up for two reasons, primarily back in the day, and that was for those with large balances to compress their balances for reasonable benefit limits, which is similar to the transfer balance cap in a nutshell. And the other scenario, which was very popular at the time, was that if you put your superannuation proceeds into one of these legacy pensions, lifetime pension, fixed term pensions, and to a lesser degree market linked pensions, then the assets themselves would be exempt from the asset test for Social Security. So the entire balance that you put in to these pensions would be exempt, which would obviously look more appealing from a capacity to obtain the age pension. So you could make money effectively, legally disappear from Social Security's testing point, not from the income test, but from the asset test. And that provided great benefits from a Social Security point of view. Now, when the regulations came in to allow you to commute, this became a joyous moment for many in the industry back in December. But one of the key issues was, well, these changes to the legislation ultimately impact the Social Security law as well, and mean that these pensions would no longer be eligible for asset test exemption. So if you commuted them, the assets would be tested, but also the very introduction of the regulations themselves put these pensions for self-managed super funds particularly at risk of losing their asset test exemption immediately from 7th of December. So what we, and the result of that is that Centrelink, Social Security can go back and reassess people over the past 5 years and effectively say, well, if we're counting this pension for asset test purposes, you actually have been overpaid, and so you would incur a debt and you would have to repay it. So the first thing that we got from the government, and we're in our effectively our holding pattern, our original holding pattern, was we got a debt waiver specification. So meaning that Social Security can waive any debt raised by the loss of asset test exemption for these types of pensions. And we've now also got the complementary determination, which is effectively the guide to asset test exemption, has been updated to say, just because this change has come in, if you choose to keep your asset test exemption, or if you choose to keep the pension, you won't lose your asset test exemption. So we've got these two documents together.
Yeah, and really that second piece that you're referring to there, where people arguably want to retain that pension for some period of time or permanently or whatever, ultimately they were going to get caught up in the changes that were taking effect from December last year. So you have a position where the government was providing an exit for these types of legacy products, and people that were taking advantage of it were in essence needed the level of certainty around the fact that they were not going to be reassessed historically and therefore have a debt back to Centrelink in respect to that age pension entitlement. And as you said, there's been a specification that we're working through there. And I think from memory, Tim, it's towards the end of this month in October, yep, where we have to, in essence, get through that disallowance period of both houses. And then I guess supplementary to that, or one of the problems that the way in which it was drafted was that it not only caught those that wanted to make a decision, but by virtue of those regulations coming in by default, and i.e. they get brought into trust deeds and so on and so forth, they end up in a position where they end up no different to those that actually do undertake a commutation, which didn't seem right, and which is why we've now seen that technical issue addressed further as well.
Yeah, and let's be clear with this: the government's intention all along was never to inconvenience, for want of a better term, those that didn't want to change the status quo. So those that wanted to retain their pensions, it was never the government's intention through the introduction of these regulations to get them cut off from their age pension entitlements. It was just ultimately a byproduct of the way that legislation was worded and the way that Social Security law was worded, that basically meant that any change to the rules, whether it was by the deed or by the legislation itself, that changed the terms of these pensions, would ultimately make those pensions no longer asset test exempt. So that's why the debt waiver was important. But ultimately, in effect, the allowance to continue these pensions and retain asset test exemption is actually probably even more important than the waiver in many instances.
Yeah. So I guess the cut a long story short here, what for those that are looking to take advantage of these of this amnesty, this 5-year amnesty for any type of these legacy pensions that we're talking about, defined benefit income streams with an SMSS, most likely lifetime rather than life expectancy, because in a lot of instances that expectancy term is pretty much finished up, and then our market link pensions. So what are the most important things today that people need to be aware of if they want to undertake these commutations of those legacy products?
Yeah, look, I think the most important thing that they need to understand today is what so if their decision is to commute these pensions, then what impact does that have potentially on their social security? So the fact that the assets will be counted, it will mean that will be a reassessment and effectively a recalculation moving forward. So that means there will be likelihood of changes to what you receive from an age pension point of view. In addition to that, you've got to contemplate what does it mean for things such as a transfer balance cap inside of your fund, and whether or not you have cap space if you choose to commence a new pension. Do you have enough cap space to do that, or does the money need to sit in accumulation? And I guess importantly, if your pension was reversionary, so you're already the recipient of a pension due to the death of a spouse previously, then the decisions you make will have far greater impact than for those who are the primary beneficiaries themselves, because you can't just leave the money in accumulation like you can if you're the primary beneficiary. You either have to start a new death benefit income stream, which could be impacted by the fact that you don't have transfer balance cap space, or you have to pull that money out of superannuation. So there's a number of elements that people need to factor in with the decision-making process.
Yeah, and I guess these are all things that we're going to be exploring in our upcoming webinar, which is on the 9th of October. Timing, of course, is really important here, because not only have we seen the determination come out this week, but we also were aware that the legislative timeframe, that in terms of that instrument needing to go through both houses of Parliament, was also going to, fingers crossed, reach its conclusion around the 29th of October as well. So it is a real timely event for us to run for those that have clients with legacy retirement products that ultimately have some form of asset test exemption attached to it, whether it's 100% asset test exemption or 50% asset test exemption.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I mean, never have we been more excited by disallowance periods, Aaron. I mean, this is our third disallowance period for the year. And I think in 20 plus years of this industry, I've never once even contemplated a disallowance period. And here we are looking at our third one now with this new set of determinations coming out. But yeah, there's a lot to factor in. And so our focus in our webinar will, of course, be the asset test exemption, but we'll revisit those non-asset test exempt ones as well, because a lot of people are now finalising the 24-25 year and then making decisions as to whether now is a time to look to commute their existing legacy pensions.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, because you have already done hundreds of these as a part of the applications that people are using via our Legacy Pensions Hub. So it provides us with an opportunity to go back and discuss what we've been working through, the things that we've found through these processes, and give some real practical insight into the issues of exiting. And like you said, it will have a far greater asset test exempt focus in this instance, but certainly giving some real insights here into what those steps are is something that I suspect many of our viewers will get a lot of value out of.
100%.
Excellent. Well, thank you once again. Like I said, if you want to join us for that upcoming webinar on the 9th of October, you can visit our website, smartersmsf.com/events. Look up the webinar update on exiting SMSF legacy pensions. Thanks once again, Tim. Have a great rest of the week.
Always a pleasure. We'll catch you next week.
Bye all.